everyone, I'm Lily. Welcome to my channel. I'm an urban homesteader on the central coast of California, and today I just wanted to show you a little bit of my urban garden and tell you a bit about my urban homesteading journey. So firstly, you're probably wondering why I'm sitting here in my living room, and that's one of the first things about being an urban homesteader is that sometimes you live in a very tight space with your neighbors very, very close to you. So my situation is I live in a 2-level condo and I have neighbors I share walls with on this side and I share walls with on this side. And I have a small kind of patio garden in the front and a small garden in the back. So while the structure is okay for like visual privacy, it's not very good for audio privacy. So I just don't really feel comfortable going out in my gardens and talking to a camera, and I just feel a little self-conscious because literally every sound that we make in our front yards, all of the neighbors can hear like upstairs in their bedrooms. So I'm gonna be sitting here in my living room today and telling you about my garden while I show you lovely images here of my garden, and yeah, we're just gonna have to do it that way. I guess the beginning of my urban homesteading, urban gardening journey actually started at a 2-bedroom apartment that I lived in just on the other side of the street, actually, from where I am now. And I started out by growing oyster mushrooms in my bathtub and growing potatoes in a pillowcase on a balcony that was literally 100% sunless. So I think that's something that I wanted to tell people about as far as where I got to start, because I think a lot of people out there are interested in doing gardening, they're interested in learning about homesteading, and they want to get their hands in the dirt and stuff. And I'm like, you know what, even if you live in like a studio apartment, you can start doing things that can get this journey going for you. Because I have, even going all the way back, which was like 5, maybe 6 years ago, when I was growing potatoes in a pillowcase on a sunless balcony and growing mushrooms in my bathtub, I was starting to develop my skill set, right? Because gardening it takes years and years and years, right? Like, and the sooner you get started, the sooner you'll start learning stuff about the soil, about nutrients, about the plants, about sunlight, climate, warmth, moisture, all this stuff. Like, you're cultivating a relationship with these other creatures, these plant creatures that I think, the sooner you start learning, the better. And even if you're in a small apartment with a tiny window, you can grow something. You can start with something. You can even just grow mushrooms literally in like a spare closet or something. And you can just start familiarizing yourself with the process that, that plants and fungi and everything that they grow through in their life cycles, and how you as a human can be a good steward to these other creatures and to cultivate your own food, cultivate your own abundance in your home. My cat likes to chime in on some of these topics too. So my journey started in that 2-bedroom apartment, and when I moved here about 4 years ago, I know I keep pointing behind me, but my front yard is actually behind me and my backyard is in front of me, so I'm gonna keep saying front and back even though that looks weird. My front garden was just basic. It's mostly still concrete tile, and it had a small patch of like astroturf, and the backyard is basically mostly astroturf and also concrete. So there's just really not a whole lot of space. You can see from this, when I first moved in, this is what the front yard looked like. And you can see it's enclosed on 3 sides. Actually, it's pretty much enclosed on 4 sides. It's like a courtyard or an atrium type setup. So I really just get like kind of a narrow, not narrow, but just, you know, a small stream of sunlight that migrates, you know, depending on the season, and can really change the microclimate a lot. Here you can see what it looks like now. I basically ripped out the AstroTurf so that I could get a proper bed, raised bed, established that would have access to like real dirt and soil underneath it. And then of course I built up my soil on top of that. And you can also see there's just a lot of containers, and container gardening is a legit way of gardening, and you can do a lot with it. There are some types of things that grow well in containers and some things that don't, and that's kind of a part of figuring things out. And the backyard, it's still AstroTurf and concrete, but I've built like a little kind of former greenhouse, now just a pavilion. And I just use a lot of container gardening in the back. Let me just go ahead and talk to you about what I'm actually growing in my gardens. So I, you know, being a homesteader, want to try and grow as much food or medicinal type of plants as possible. And that is, you know, different than someone who maybe just wants to grow flowers or other things like that. It is a different approach, and definitely my output is limited by the space I have here, but you'd be surprised how much you can produce even in a small space. In the center of the garden, I have my large raised bed and then a bunch of pots kind of all arranged around that area. I found that keeping all of my containers close together helps build like a thermal mass, right? If you just have one container out there by itself, it's a little more subject to temperature fluctuations. And if you put several containers clustered together, that kind of gets closer to simulating, you know, how plants would actually grow in a big mass of land, right? In a big soil that is all one big mass connected to each other, that doesn't heat up and cool down quite as fast because there's more of it. So putting all your containers, kind of clustering them together, can kind of help create more of that thermal mass. I found that arrangement to be more conducive to having healthier plants overall. Here you can see I'm growing some stinging nettle. This is my first time growing it. It's a medicinal herb. It's also a food. It's very nutritious. There's some of it that kind of grows around my area here, but I kind of want to try just growing it myself. So this is my first year growing that, and up above that I have a couple of apricot trees. These are still small saplings. These actually were volunteer in my compost bin. They just started growing, and honestly for me, I've had enough experiences where, you know, I tried to grow something and it, you know, it died, or it didn't produce anything, or it just, you know, generally didn't thrive. That if something volunteers to be in my garden, I'm sort of like, okay, I'm gonna give you a fair chance. If you want to live here, you can live here. So these little apricot trees were sprouting in my compost bin from these apricot pits. And so yeah, I just gave each one of them a little pot, and this is the, I want to say their third year, and this is how big they are. Actually, I think this one is its third year, and then the one behind it, it's a little bit smaller. I think it's only the second year, I think. One's 1 year older. Okay, so moving over, I have some California sagebrush. This is a plant that I just snagged out of the wild, actually. It's one of my favorite herbs, one of my favorite plants that grows out here in the wild. And when I first moved in here, I just really, really wanted to have a California sagebrush in my garden. So I went and just stole one, a little baby one, from the wild, from a national preserve that we have out here. No idea how legal that was, but there's tons of it growing out there, so it's definitely not like endangered or anything. So I've been keeping that here in my garden, growing in this little pot, and you know, it's doing okay. I think it would be happier out in the wild, and I think one of these days I may return it back to its family where it truly belongs. But for now, it's here in my happy little garden. So moving over, what do we have next? So here's another medicinal herb that I'm growing called motherwort. This is my second season growing it. Yeah, my second season growing it. And the first season, it really just, it didn't do much. It kind of was just a tiny little seedling just hanging out, kind of very slowly establishing itself. And then this year, it's just taken over this whole pot. I think it generally grows a little bigger than what you see here, and the pot may be restricting it. I'm still learning, but motherwort is a great medicinal plant for a lot of uses. It's a good bitter, women's hormonal management and stuff like that. So next to that, I have a tomato plant. This is a beefsteak tomato. It's my first year growing beefsteak tomato, and I'm totally growing it by accident. So here's a little lesson in when you save seeds to make sure that you label them, because as much as you might think that you remember what seeds you saved, you will not remember what seeds you saved. So when I planted this out, I thought I was planting cherry tomatoes, but I ended up with beefsteak, and I have a couple more in the backyard. Beefsteak tomatoes that was a pleasant surprise. And so this one, they definitely take a lot longer to come in than cherry tomatoes, that's for sure. Cherry tomatoes is something I've been growing for like the last 3 years. There's a really good variety that both this beefsteak and the cherry tomatoes are varieties that I saved seeds from a local CSA that I have been getting food from for years, which I highly recommend. If you could sign up for a CSA, that's one of the best things you could do. If you can't like homestead, if you can't grow everything that you want to grow because you're in a small space like I am, you know, buying from local farmers, supporting local CSAs is one of the best ways that you can basically, as an extension, build like a food community, which is a part of homesteading. It's a part of being self-sufficient, is actually building a broader self-sufficient community. So supporting your local farmers and strengthening that local food economy is really important. So if you can get a CSA, sign up for that or something, or go to your farmer's market, like I consider that urban homesteading still. It's an extension of it. So I got these tomato seeds from my local CSA. They were delicious, so I saved the seeds. And I had same thing with cherry tomatoes, and same thing with quite a few of the things that I'm growing too. You just get free quality seeds, and one of the best things about doing that too is that that if that fruit or vegetable or whatever has come from a local farmer, that it's something that will grow well in your region, as opposed to going to the grocery store and buying something that who knows, maybe it's a variety that does better in a different climate. And maybe it will do fine in your climate too, or maybe it won't, but at least if you're getting seeds from locally grown produce, you know that it's gonna do well where you're growing. So next I have this purple basil, and it was having some cabbage worm issues early on, but I seem to have gotten it under control. I just like it adds a nice color to the garden, and I'll pinch off like some leaves and stuff occasionally and throw them into like my stew or whatever. It's nice. Here is a potato plant that is a semi-volunteer. I think I tried to grow potatoes in this pot last season and it didn't do so well. I don't know what went wrong. But this season, another potato plant popped up because apparently I didn't grab all the potatoes out of the pot. I missed one. But it seems to want to be here and seems to be doing better than the last round. So, who am I to say it can't live in my garden? So I just have been watering it and just kind of, we're gonna see where this goes. Again, also potatoes that I got from my local CSA. Moving around to this side, I have my large garden bed, and this was the area where I actually had to pull back astroturf and remove a whole lot of like hard as concrete dirt and gravel that have been packed down underneath the astroturf. It's a part of how they installed the astroturf, right? And then there's like a weed barrier underneath that. So it took a lot of time and a lot of work to remove all of that and clear some space where there was actual earth underneath. But here's the end result, and I just kind of built some wood planks around it. And right now I'm growing carrots and green beans, some broccoli. So let's see, the carrots also from the CSA. They're these nice, they're just really nice, I don't know what the variety is called, but I really liked them. So I actually took, with carrots it's a little trickier. So I had a little leftover nub of carrot that started sprouting leaves in my compost bin. So it was actually a volunteer initially. So I took that little nub, planted it in some soil, it grew a full plant. It doesn't grow a whole new carrot, but it does grow a full plant above ground, including the flower. So I let the flower grow, and then when the season came around and the flower died off, I collected all those seeds, and now I have a nice little bag of those carrot seeds, and that's what I've been planting here. I'm also growing some contender green beans. This is not a variety from my CSA, but it's just some random variety I picked up from the gardening store. I never had that variety before, but I tried them and I really liked them. So I like to eat these fresh usually. Just pick them right off the plant and dust them off, eat them right there. I don't use any like pesticides or herbicides. It's like all organic, which is a little more work than if you just spray chemicals. But it's worth it, I think, to have healthy food. This broccoli plant I actually overwintered. So it grew over winter time, and it's sort of snaked its way through the garden here. I don't know why I did that. At some point I guess it was falling over under its own weight, but then the stem hardened up and it was able to stand back up again. I'm not sure. This is my first time growing broccoli as well, and the cabbage moths really love this stuff. So I haven't gotten like a proper broccoli flower head on this one, but I have gotten tiny little flowers that I've been snipping off and throwing into stew. I actually eat the leaves too. So you can eat broccoli leaves too. You can just stir fry them or throw them into stew. You kind of just treat them the same as like collard greens. And they have a lot of nutrition. So that's food too, right there. And this one definitely is producing a good amount of leaves, so I've been getting mostly leaves. And then the occasional, floret from this. Here I'm growing holy basil in a couple different containers. Also my second season growing holy basil, similar to the motherwort, it was just like the first season, it was just like a tiny little seedling, and it wasn't like growing, but it wasn't like dying either. And I was like, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. But the second season, it's doing just fine. So I think some of these herbs just sort of take a season to establish themselves or something. And all of the channels I watched talking about planting and growing your own medicinal herbs, they never really seem to mention like how long the cultivation takes. So still don't know if maybe I was doing something wrong. I may have been, but for me, my experience was I spent the first year just staring at tiny seedlings, wondering what the heck I was doing. And then now they're all just doing great. They're super happy. So holy basil is one of my favorite herbs, actually. It's an adaptogen. It's great as a mood stabilizer. It's great as it's very energizing. So I think it's great as a coffee replacement. So I wanted to grow my own because it's something I knew I was going to be consuming anyway. Here in this bed I have some garlic bulbs, and they're not doing great. They're not doing terrible either. I'm still learning a lot of this stuff, still figuring it out. If anyone has any tips for growing bigger garlic bulbs, leave it down in the comment because I'm all ears. This is I think my second year growing garlic, and it's doing a little better than the year before, but it's definitely, I'm not getting the size bulbs that I really want. A random container actually that I picked up, It was just free. It was just free, I think. Someone just was getting rid of it. And Craigslist is a good place, or you can find a lot of free containers just kind of maybe in your neighborhood or your town. So you don't have to like go buy those super expensive containers, which can really add up. I know in my garden I have a lot of these terracotta colored plastic containers, and kind of getting the garden started initially was like, it was a lot of money up front. It felt like getting all the soil, getting all the containers, all of that, and but you can find free containers. You can make free containers. This long bed, my garlic bed, I actually built this one out from just extra plywood I had. I wouldn't recommend building with plywood because it does have like glues and other chemicals and stuff in it that can like leach into your soil if you're trying to like avoid exposure to stuff like that. For me, I just had it on hand and it was like, whatever, It's not perfect, but like, it's still possible. You can still do it. This plywood container has been here since we moved here, and that's been 4 years. It's 4 years old, and I've grown different things in it. I've grown lettuce, I've grown leeks, I'm growing garlic. I think there was I grew cherry tomatoes in it. I think I grew strawberries were growing in it at some point. Volunteer strawberries. That's always exciting. But yeah, you don't have to spend like tons of money getting like super, nice containers from the garden store. This one I got for free. I'm growing nasturtium, and nasturtium is a great plant for people who are just starting out. It's edible, it's a medicinal herb as well, and it grows super easy. It likes growing in the shade, actually, I have found. When I tried to grow it in the sun, it was very unhappy. But once it got shady in that area I was growing it just flourished. It took off. And you can see here, it's in full shade, basically. It gets some light reflected kind of off of like the tiles on my patio. It's a great plant, I think, for people who are just starting out, who want something that's easy, something that's pretty, something that, you can just clip the leaves, and the flowers are edible, the leaves are edible. You can just throw them in your salad or something. So also in my front yard, I have a worm bin. And I have had these worms for less than a year. And this is a great way to amend your garden, basically for free. I mean, composting in general is great. And I've been doing sort of just your regular composting for several years. Actually, back at that 2-bedroom apartment I mentioned, I also had a compost on that little sunless balcony. I was still composting then even, and that helped me grow those potatoes in the pillowcase. But worms are great because they actually kind of speed up the process, in my opinion, and you have to be a little more careful about how much food you put in at one time. That's like a whole other video about how to care for worms that I may do in the future. But I gotta tell you, it was great. Like adding that worm, composted worm soil, or worm poop basically, back into my garden has like made my garden flourish so much better than previous years. I've kind of been cheap when it comes to amendments since I started, and I have to say, amending your soils is really important and makes a big difference. You just have to know how to do it, and there are ways to do it on the cheap, and I'll have a video about that in the future. But one of those ways is definitely having a worm compost. They're very quick and efficient in like turning over your kitchen scraps into basically just rich fertilized soil to add into your garden. Okay, so that's gonna do it for the front yard. I'm moving to my backyard. There's not as much going on in my backyard. I just kind of started growing back here this year. So I just have a few containers, but I'll just go ahead and show you what I have going on. I just planted out some carrots and, well, some more contender green beans. They grow really easy. I think contender green beans, they've been really good to me, honestly, and other than just the cabbage moths taking them over and decimating them from time to time, we have to stay on top of that problem. I think they just grow really easy and they produce really well, and it makes for good fresh eating, or you can, you know, cook and prepare the green beans however you want. You can even can them and store them if you want, or just put them in the freezer. I prefer to just eat them fresh. And you can grow them in a pretty tight space. Yeah, so I wanted to grow a little more back here in this container. This is just like an old tub we had. I can't remember what we were using it for. There's even a hole cut in it for some reason, but yeah, you can just get like old storage containers and grow out of that. You don't have to, again, you don't have to spend lots of money on expensive containers and whatnot. Here's another beefsteak tomato that I'm growing. I have this technique I use for fertilizing my flowers, for pollinating my tomato flowers. Since I don't really get many pollinators out here for some reason, we don't have like normal honeybees in this area. We have these tiny little fly bees, like they're weird. They kind of just hover and they look like a little fly, but then they're striped like a bee. I don't know what the heck they are. But even those don't come around very often. I don't get many pollinators, unfortunately. I'm trying to grow more plants that might draw pollinators. That's on my to-do list. You know, I do get lots of cabbage moths though. No problem drawing those guys in. But a way for pollinating tomato plants is, some people use like an electric toothbrush method. I haven't tried that. But what I do is every day I go out, I find the little flowers that are open and ready to go, and I just ever so gently like tickle my little finger on the flower and then just gently tap the stem. And I have found like nearly 100% success rate as far as pollination goes with these. So yeah, maybe that'll help you if you don't have any pollinators in your tomato garden. Another sort of semi-volunteer potato growing here. This is the first time I've actually had a potato plant flower. So I haven't mentioned really my climate. The general climate that I live in is a little unusual. We don't really get the typical 4 seasons out here on the California coast. It's a little odd. Like our summers are long and cool and cloudy, and our fall time is actually hot, and then our winter time is like very, very mild, almost like an early spring. Like I feel like the winters around here are just a long early spring, and then springtime is like normal springtime weather. So the potatoes that I've grown out here in past years, I've never gotten them to flower, and this is the first year that I've gotten my potato plants to flower. And I don't know exactly what the difference is about this specific spot or this specific container. I'm trying to figure that out, because I feel like what has normally happened with my potatoes is they'll throw out their leaves, they'll grow a whole plant, it will never flower, it will kind of die off, but as it's dying off, it's already throwing up a new plant. And like it's like the climate is confusing out here for some plants. There's definitely some things I can't grow out here. Like plants that need 4 seasons, plants that need really hot, long summers, I can't grow those out here. You know, I can't really grow okra. You know, stone fruit trees don't really do so well out here. They, you know, because they generally like long, hot summers. And potatoes, you know, I think they're kind of a little confused. At least I haven't figured out how to grow them out here exactly, but the ones that they seem to be confused about, like what time of year it is, like a lot of the plants out here, because the seasons are all flippity-floppity. So it makes it hard for me also to know, like, when am I supposed to harvest this plant? Because it's like it had a plant and then it just barely started to die, but then it started to grow a new one already, and I'm like, I don't, you know, that's like not the normal potato growing cycle. So I'm excited that I got potato flowers, basically is what I'm saying. And I'm actually gonna let this go a little longer, and then I'm gonna harvest it and see if my harvest is any better than past years. In past years, they've always been very tiny. I don't really get like big you know, big hunkin' potatoes, but I want big hunkin' potatoes. Over here I'm growing some calendula, and again, just like my other herbs, this is the second year for the calendula, and I again spent the whole first year just looking at tiny little seedlings wondering what was I doing wrong. But now it's flowering and seems to be struggling a little bit with like this mildew on the leaves here. I'm still trying to move this pot around to find the right spot for it, you know, temperature wise, sunlight wise, airflow wise, all of that. That's one of the plus sides about using containers in a garden that I wanted to mention also, is that you can move them around, you know, and as if you just moved into a new space and you don't know kind of what the little microclimate effects are in that tiny space, it's good to have containers that you can move around because you can adjust as you go. You know, if the plant seems like it needs more light, you can move it into more light. If it seems like it needs less light, move it into less light. If it's you know, too hot in this area or too cold in this area, you can kind of move these plants around, and they'll let you know what spot they like best, because they'll start to, you know, improve in their growth and their appearance. So if you're moving into a new space, in your urban space, I mean, even if you're not urban gardening, using containers is a great way to kind of gauge what your microclimates are, the little pockets all around, you know. Calendulas are a medicinal herb. Again, great for making balms for your skin and a bunch of other stuff. So also something that is just really pretty to look at. It's just so sunny and happy when the flowers come out. It's great to be greeted by calendula when you come out to your garden in the morning. So yeah, moving on, we just have some more beefsteak tomatoes growing over here. I have some rosemary that I established over here. This is just, actually I just got these like as clippings from a friend of mine. She had some extra rosemary growing and she brought it over in a little baggie, just some clippings, and I stuck them in some water in a jar, changed the water out every couple days. It started to grow roots, and then I just planted them here, and they're just kind of, I think, establishing themselves. They seem to be doing okay. So this structure I built originally because I was growing microgreens, and that's like a whole other journey. Being an urban farmer or a micro farmer or whatever you want to call it. And I can share that journey maybe in another video, but this structure originally was a greenhouse to grow my microgreens in. But it has since become basically just a nice little pavilion or so, or something for us to hang out in the backyard and just enjoy the garden. This actually works really well as a rain catchment system, and I have caught rain off of this structure because it's tilted slightly towards the front, so all the water runs right down the front edge here. And I basically just placed like open storage containers, like open plastic bins, just all along that front edge on the ground, and so the water would just fall straight into that, and you can still catch water that way and use it in your garden, or if you have a proper filtration and sterilization system, you can, you know, even use it to cook and drink with, you know, to drink and cook with. But I wanted to actually get a proper water catchment system set up here, so I went and got this barrel off Craigslist. Craigslist, again, it's your friend. You can find lots of resources. Actually, I got my worms off Craigslist too, from someone that lives nearby. So you can find a lot of, you know, gardening and homesteading resources through Craigslist. So this barrel, and it just coincidentally happened to be the same color as my siding and house, which was nice. It was one less task for me to do. I didn't have to paint it. But in a future video, I may do something where I actually set up my proper water catchment system. I got to get a gutter installed along the front here, and then get that hooked up to the barrel. So that'll be a future endeavor on the homestead. You may have noticed, and this is not necessarily related to urban homesteading. Well, Actually, I mean, I think maybe it is. Okay, so I have this fish netting all across the top of my backyard here. Maybe you didn't notice it, but now you should. So take a look at it. This is because I love my cats so much. They want to be outside. I don't want them to get hit by cars. So this is our compromise. We basically just enclose the whole top of the backyard because it's small enough to do that. This is working pretty well. We just use little hooks along the edge here to anchor it in. It stretches all the way under the eave of the house. Honestly, I really like this as a solution. This particular type of netting, fish netting, is really great because it doesn't feel like there's anything there. And so yeah, that's our solution for letting our cats be farm cats, our urban farm cats, without worrying about them getting out into traffic or getting into fight with neighborhood cats and all that stuff, you know. And believe it or not, my cats really are guardians of the garden. They chase off the cabbage moths quite often, and they leave their scent on things, which is good because we actually do have a rat problem from time to time in this unit. Some of my neighbors, you know, don't take care of their dwellings very well, so occasionally we'll get rats kind of wandering into the garden and stealing my tomatoes and other such things. They'll dig up my potatoes out of the dirt too, like little jerks. But having my cats be able to freely hang out in my gardens is great because, again, they leave their scent. It kind of sort of deters those rodents a little more. Oh yes, and then lastly, I have my ordinary compost bin over here. I call this my ordinary compost bin. So this is where I throw kind of all my garden clippings. I'll throw kitchen scraps and stuff in here too. This will create nice rich soil to help amend my garden with and to put more nutrients back into the soil, just like the worm bin, but it works a little slower. You know, it's your typical composting, you know, hot composting bin back here that I have. And that does it. So thank you guys for joining me. If you have any questions or tips for improving my garden, definitely leave them down into the comment section because you know, I'm still learning here too, and I just want to share some of the things I know with people and encourage people who are in small spaces, in apartment buildings, in studio apartments, you know, to encourage you to start your homesteading journey now. You know, there are definitely things you can grow, things you can learn. You can talk to local farmers, you know, start learning about your local food economy and food system as well, because that's a part of it. Anyway, thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next time.